Hello and welcome everybody. Today I'm here with Matt Smith, one of the authors of the Unity Cookbook 5th edition that I've got right here. This is a great book for new developers and intermediate to advanced developers looking for ways to solve a bunch of different problems. And I'm just excited to talk to you about this book, Matt, about the process of writing it, kind of what drove you through it, and maybe get some of the best takeaways and lessons for people who don't have the book yet. And if you don't have the book, I'll make sure to link it in the description so you can go check it out. So welcome, Matt. Thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot. Nice to be here. Nice to see you.
Well, so first, I just wanted to give you a chance to really quickly introduce the book.
So so this is the 5th edition. So about, 10 or 11 years ago, I suppose I had an idea for a book. I suppose it's the book I wish I had when I was learning Unity. Just a whole bunch of how do you do things, how do you do UI, how do you do 2D or 3D, is there AI type stuff in there, how do you play sounds, all those sorts of questions. And I'd seen a few cookbooks in other languages and all sorts, so I sort of contacted Pact. And originally they found 2 other authors. I can't remember the third person because eventually they didn't deliver any chapters. So the first couple of editions were myself and a guy, Chico Coeres. And then this last edition now is myself. Sean is another lecturer at TU Dublin, Technology University Dublin, where I work in London. Sinead's actually my wife, but she's also an IT professional and also a part-time lecturer at the university. So that's this edition. Yeah, so I think Unity, it moves quite a bit every year, every couple of years. There's a whole bunch of new features or new ways of doing things. The new input system was something to get used to, and so on. They're always adding more and more packages. So yeah, we're down to sort of every 2 years now. Pact want me to update it. So that's where it came from. That's where we are now.
Nice. I think it does a good job of kind of what you mentioned, where sort of at the beginning, the driving force of being something that you wanted when you started out with Unity. Because when I looked through, started skimming through the chapters, I was like, oh yeah, I remember when I wanted to figure this out. I remember when I wanted to figure this out. A lot of them were like in the first 3 to 12 months, where I was like, I'd worked with games before, but I didn't know how to do the Unity ways to do different stuff. I didn't know how to move an object the right way, what all of the different options were, how to do anything with audio. In fact, I always forget audio exists. Reading the book again, I was like, oh yeah, there's audio in games. A lot of other things. So I found it super interesting. And when I was looking for Unity books when I started out, I think there were 2 books out there, and I bought them both, but they were both, neither one of them boiled it down kind of like the cookbooks do. And I really like that, where you can just search for a specific topic and then go figure out how to do that topic. It's kind of like having an internet resource where you're going and searching, but you're able to do it on paperback and having kind of a solid, trustable resource instead of just guessing, which I think is a lot better when you're starting out. When you're starting out and you just search the internet, you can find all kinds of answers and a million different ways to do things. And when you find just a solid set of ways and patterns to do stuff, I think that's super handy. So I don't know, I think it's good you wrote it, and I'm happy that it's out there to start recommending to people. While you were writing this book, I guess I'm curious, this is the 5th edition. So how much has it changed over version 1 through 5? Has it been drastic? Or what are some of the biggest changes?
I think from the 1st edition to the 5th edition, I'd say everything has been rewritten. From the 4th edition to the 5th edition, I'd say a good 20 to 30 to 35%. We've gone through and updated things. I think the print quality has increased, so we had to redo a whole bunch of screenshots, and obviously the interface changes slightly every year or so. So we want to make sure that it is 2023 screenshots that are there. I suppose it's partly driven by my interests and partly driven maybe my questions my students at college want. So there's much more interest in AR and VR type development. So we've now got dedicated chapters, a chapter just on mobile, a chapter on AR, a chapter on VR. A lot of my students would have these MetaQuest 2, the MetaQuest 3s are out now, headsets, and they want to know how to use Unity to develop for that. So that was certainly something we wanted to bring into this one. I think Pro Builder's now built into Unity. It has been maybe for a couple of years. I think it was maybe just about to happen in the previous edition. So we've got a dedicated chapter on Pro Builder, because I mean I'd be quite a fan of Blender actually, but it's great now. You can actually, if you learn Pro Builder there, you can do an awful lot of quick mocking up of architecture within a scene, and then obviously later on you can bring in higher quality models if you want to, but that's great. So those are some things that I've got the book here as well. I wrote it 6 months ago, and you do 1,000 things a year, so I'm trying to remember anything else that's jumped out recently, but those are some of the key ones. Let's take a quick look. I think we had to update things for shader graphs. Particle systems again actually was something I think that changed a bit. Yeah, I think one or two. I think I had to make a bit of space there, so I cut out a little bit of some of the testing. I think I went quite deep into the testing unit, but there's still a little bit there. So I think part of it is, as you say, I think if they know a little bit of C#, if they sort of know how to start up Unity and learn their way around it, there's quite a bit there to say. Here's how to do basic UI and a button to go between scenes. Here's how to do basic player sound and so on. But then I wanted people who know Unity. So once you've had the book for 6 months, there's still a bunch of things there that you might not know how to do. So how can you synchronize sound clips accurately if they're 140 beats per minute or whatever, or how could you use the web communication from Unity to say to a web API, either maybe retrieving data, or I've got a little example of a little PHP scoreboard. So we want to have things towards the end of each chapter. There's normally one or two of these recipes that are just a little bit more challenging, which beginners probably can just leave alone and just be aware you can do that, and people a bit more experienced can go and have a go. And obviously, if you have a headset, then you can have a go at the VR stuff. If you have a mobile phone, I'd say Android's much easier to develop for, because you can just produce that APK file and send it over. But if you have an Apple phone, you can. The steps are there for how to actually set up the free developer account and push things onto Apple too. I'm hoping in the next few months to get my hands on the Apple Vision Pro. So the next edition, I'm hoping I can have a chapter or a part of the chapter there on spatial mixed reality or whatever they call it.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And it makes a lot of sense when you talk about the VR and mobile stuff, especially for new developers, because most of them, I mean, it's fun building things on the computer. It's way more exciting when you put something into a VR headset or onto a phone and you start to show it to people, or this is the first time you deploy something to your Xbox or get onto any actual device and start to show it to people. So I feel like that's a huge thing, and I can see why a lot of students would be really interested in it, and why it would probably be a big driving factor for people getting the book, because they want to know about that. It should probably be called out that it's got VR on the cover somewhere.
Probably
with VR. I don't know.
And I suppose another big thing for me is everything there has been tried and works in all sorts, and the full projects you can download from GitHub, so you don't have to type in all the code listings and so on. The code's there as files, but also you can download the project and load it into Unity and set it up and run it. So I think obviously I like paper books. I like to have a book open to be reading to and so on, but obviously you've got the online side of things. I'm pretty sure if you have your proof of purchase, you can actually just contact Pact and they send you the PDF version for free as well. I remember reading that there. So you'll have you can copy and paste text from the book too, or search through. But that's a big thing. I think it's why it takes so long. I mean, every 2 years, but we'll start towards the end of this year to plan what we'll do next year, and then by the time we get to actually it is 24 now, isn't it? Yeah. So then I've lost another year. So then next year will be 2025. So I suppose this time next year we might be working on the edition there and try and get it out for the autumn. So that's
it'll be for Unity 6 then, once they switch their versioning.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff watching what they're gonna do next, isn't it? But there's still, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I've had a go at playing with Unreal actually, but I suppose I know Unity inside out at this stage. I was actually talking to Chris Gregan the other day, who does the forward for us. So he's he's the lead architect, the chief programmer in Romero Games. that's the games company in Galway there. That's John and Brenda Romero from Quake and well, all those other games.
I just recently saw a post from him that they're hiring.
They are, yeah, and I spent a week with them a few years ago, so I try and keep my hands. So essentially, I got myself there as an invited, unpaid guest programmer for a week. I've known
Okay.
Chris Reagan for years. I don't know if you ever used the Fungus plugin at all. It was like a non-programming drag and drop. The sort of the graphical program. It was a free plugin. It's still actually around, still going, but I did the documentation for that. I wanted to get involved in something open source, so I knew Chris and got to meet. I saw the BAFTA there, so Brenda got a BAFTA, a British award for games contributions. That not quite as big as the Oscars, but still, it's there in the cabinet when you go into the offices. But sorry, what was I saying there? Oh yeah, about Unreal or Unity. So if you want to write something that's like Fortnite, Unreal is the engine to go. Or if you need the source code and you're a professional games organization and you want to hack and do your own internals and change how things work, I think the open source nature of Unreal is great. But I think if you want to quickly get into games development, Unity still seems to be, the big player that's out there.
Yeah, I've known a lot of people who had Unreal source code access, and I know like maybe half a dozen that actually use and understand Unreal source code of at least like personal friends. And lots of them who have the access, and they get in there and go like, okay, I'm totally lost. And they just, it's the kind of thing that you use when once you've already mastered the product and found all the issues and you know the problems, that's when source code access becomes valuable and useful. Before that, it's not very helpful. I mean, it can be a little bit useful for looking through and debugging things, but generally you're not going to make any changes or modifications to things until you've already mastered that engine, at least not successfulely. You could make some changes, but you're probably going to end up breaking things and ruining your development cycle doing it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think certainly if you want entry into games development, then I think Unity is a great way to go. Obviously, a commercial company, they'll choose whatever tools they need, and they've no issues working in different languages and all sorts. I write the book there, and I play with Unity and do a little bit of games programming on the side. But then I teach at university. I maybe spend 10% of my time actually programming, of which maybe 5% is the games programming side. It's you work with what's straightforward and easy to use, and I think once you get your head around the architecture and all the features and how the different components in Unity work, and again, if you have a cookbook with a whole bunch of sample projects or other ones that are online, then I think once that if you know how the game engine works and you've got an idea of what you want to do, then you can start putting things together and produce the product that you want.
Yeah, I'm curious on the teaching side. When you teach other newer developers that are starting to learn this stuff, what are the things that you're seeing them struggle with nowadays? So what are are there any common pitfalls and problems, things that people just don't understand or get confused on, and are any of those things that happen to be in the cookbook too?
All right. Yeah, I suppose I like been programming probably like you since the 80s and so on, and I taught myself to code and BASIC on those old funny machines, the Commodores and Amigas, and
VIC-20 was my first one.
Right, yeah. So mine was a Sinclair ZX81, but they were all, and then an Amstrad, and but slowly I learned to program. I suppose as you do larger projects, you start to understand why you need some architectural approach or separating things out, and then I went and did a business computing degree, which is half business and accounting and whatever strategic management, and half computing, and decided I liked the computing side. But they start to talk about software architectures. Now, we were learning COBOL and a little bit of Pascal those days, but I suppose, for example, you will see a little bit about MVC. So separating out how we're displaying things using the UI components. Then underneath there's internal values like a score or a countdown timer, but having those two in separate classes or whatever. So you could have different views. So a countdown timer could just be numbers that we might see there. They could be using a non-interactive slider that's moving. You could do it in a pie chart type thing and so on. But internally, it's still just a number that's going up and down. And that's something I think students will often try and put everything into, very long bits of code in very, very long classes with, and try and do everything in one place. And that's where students struggle, and I try to get them to break things down that way. I suppose another thing, which is the opposite actually, because I also teach some Bachelor of Arts digital media students. So they learn a little bit of JavaScript and HTML, but mostly they're doing video work and audio work, and maybe doing 3D modeling. And they will go online and find a little snippet of code here and a bit there, and they'll have maybe 30 or 40 classes, each with a single method, doing one little thing. So, and they'll be using maybe class static variables. So 3 or 4 different scripts will all be changing the score or the timing and all sorts, and it becomes impossible to understand the flow of control or which of the possible things of responding to events are doing something. So on the my students who are programmers, it's trying to help them understand, if you have a good architecture, it'll make sense, and especially if they're working in teams, they have to develop little bits of software that can talk to each other and so on. This idea of registering to listen to events, and what I like about Unity is, if you're just clicking a button on a screen, then you're writing something and it's registering for that, it's listening for the event of the button being clicked, and the whole publish and subscribe type thing in C# does that very well. And then for the art students, it's learning enough, understanding a little bit of code, or taking examples and examples of best practice, like the snippets from the book or whatever, bits of code that work, and then making small changes to it, but understanding the whole of what they're creating, rather than treating each part of it as a separate thing, and then they get these difficult interactions. I had a student a few years ago while I was helping someone else, and then because it was a Unity project, I got involved. But they were doing a game where I think you were trying to rescue someone in the remains of Chernobyl or something. It was radioactive, and they were swimming underwater, so trying to simulate water. And as you went underwater, then you had a little amount of air that was left and all sorts. But they had all these scripts doing all these different things, and I think the camera changed when underwater. But anyway, essentially I had to take it apart, and we turned it into 2 or 3 classes. But I think that's the difficult thing, is there is so much going on. The students, someone might understand you've got update every frame, although maybe we shouldn't do some of those things every frame, and you've got fixed update if we want to do physics type things. But there's all these other events going on as well, in terms of user input or timers or this kind of thing. So yeah, it's interesting. The challenge is that, which you'd probably find teaching as well. You never know what questions or problems, and people can come up with very creative problems that become a bit of an investigation to see what's going on, and that's the investigation. I'm not a policeman, a police officer, but I do like the investigation to see what's going on. You keep on at it until you find out what happened, then you understand it, then you can create an architecture to solve it.
Hold on 1 second. My wife just pulled up and the audio synced to my... All right. Yeah, that's very, very interesting, especially for me, the architecture part where you're talking with these coders. I mean, the art stuff's kind of cool, but or kind of interesting, but I don't know enough about art to know. But architecture is always like the biggest problem that I've seen for intermediate level developers too, either building things like you said where everything's in one single class, or everything's in one method per class. It's like they go one way, and then it's like I feel like they start off with the one class, and then they switch to a million classes, and it takes a while to get to that in between part of realizing where those seams are and stuff. Have you thought about putting something like that into a book, or are there topics like that in the current cookbook? I feel like it would be kind of difficult to spell that all out, but maybe there's a way.
I suppose the MVC I've mentioned once or twice in here, but I suppose there is a certain pattern that you stick to for the recipes there. What we wanted to do, I know Sean and I have been involved in the last couple of editions there, was maybe create one or two projects and either start them early and then use them through chapters and develop them, or to have a chapter dedicated to maybe a project from start to finish. What's nice is in the last edition that Pact have changed their template, so there's a lot less margin space. So we thought we were going to have to actually cut. We had too many chapters, they told us, and too many recipes for this edition. And then actually, because they changed it, that there's more per page, we could fit it within the number of pages there. So I think what we could do now, and we could even maybe fit another 10 or 20 pages there. So I think for the next edition, I say either we'll have one or two project case studies that'll be revisited in multiple places, or we can have a dedicated 30 or 40 pages to take something from start to finish. And certainly that's how I would teach often, is I would give students something, and then we would sort of incrementally improve it in several ways, or we'd build something very simple and then add things on and then talk about architecture later. But I think it's I think I've tried very hard to just keep it to be a single book, because I think if it becomes multiple books, several things happen. One is people would have to pay 2 or 3 times as much and so on, because the unit price, two books isn't going to be. There's still a lot of the cost goes into physically printing the thing there and so on. But the other is, I think that it'll lose being a cornucopia, a massive selection of different topics. You get a real taste of all the different parts of Unity, or as many as we can fit into one book in a single place there. And that's something I really wanted to keep. But yeah, I still there was a really good book there in the early days from the guy, what's his name? He now works for Unity in their education department. It had a campsite, but the whole book was building a single project. I'm not too up to date with other Unity books out there, because I'd almost wish I could recommend another book that did maybe take a project and take it through.
I feel like that would be an interesting, maybe a different kind of book. And honestly, I think that it's probably too advanced for like a cookbook thing. I think that the audience for a cookbook is people in their first 2 years, and they're trying to figure out the solutions to a lot of these problems, or people who maybe have been using it longer but aren't doing it full time and just trying to go through the solutions to the latest versions. But I think there would also be it may not be nearly as big a market, but a market on a book that was just the game architecture of a bunch of different games. Like if each chapter was a different, maybe even if it was just like case studies of 10 real games, and it just kind of had like the code architecture and the general structure of how each one is built, so you could kind of see like, hey, these are 10 different real games that are out there, and this is how they were built. And something like that it'd be an interesting, fun read that's like a casual programmer read, I guess, or game programmer.
Yeah. I mean, talking about that, what we certainly could do perhaps is have a where to go next chapter, perhaps in the next edition, and say, well, here's some key topics. So because probably some people might have described a bit about games out there. So actually, that's a great idea, which I'll steal from you. I'll acknowledge. And say,
well, please do. If you make the book, I would love to read it.
So, because one thing we've done is there's this sort of further reading section at the end of each chapter, just to give people links to other things on the same topic, or maybe if it's the audio chapter, some free audio resources. So, but no, that's interesting. I think because where to go next is something that's missing there. But again, I've been funny. I hit the 30-year mark lecturing this January, and I started programming a long time before I started lecturing and so on. So I think there's a lot of things that you see after decades in an industry and decades doing something, and it'd be nice to point people into the source of that kind of wisdom. But of course they do say, and I've watched my. Actually, no, I won't say that. We'll cut that bit. My daughter was late for a deadline for an exam. So, but anyway, but I suppose I'll go. The thing I wanted to say. I mean, they do say, you have to. You can't listen to wisdom. You have to make the mistakes yourself and learn things the hard way. But maybe if you've heard a little bit of the wisdom, when those mistakes happen, you can reflect on it, and it'll help you, move forward in the future. So. people need to listen to the experienced voices in the industry, I think, if they want to move forward and develop their careers themselves.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I feel like one of the best parts of working at an actual game company or software company is being able to learn from the more senior developers, the people who've been doing it for 5, 10, 20 years, doing the same thing and built all this stuff up. If you can take advantage of and learn from them, it's great. And if you can't, then books are a great alternative. Books and other online, whatever, just find people who can teach you these things that have some experience. Don't just try to go guess everything. Also, don't just randomly ask AI, because it's great for stuff, but it's also, I feel like for me, and I don't mean to distract onto an AI topic, but it's great most of the time, but I would not push like a new developer to have AI recommendations popping up constantly, because they're wrong at least half the time. And if I didn't know they were wrong and I just let it autocomplete, I'd be going down the wrong path constantly. It often makes the wrong decisions, but it's super handy. Like, it speeds me up a lot too. So,
it's interesting when I'm pleased there's still a little bit of unit testing towards the end of the book in the final chapter there, because I think whether something's written by a colleague, a junior programmer, or written by yourself, or written by AI, I think what's important is that you're able to understand and specify what you want that software component to do, and either you do it informally and double checks. If AI writes something for you, then you double check it's doing what you thought it was going to do and it's not doing the things you don't want it to. Or better still, you might have these automated tests, the code tests, and then the user simulation tests. So I do think that's going to become a much bigger thing. Again, so I won't distract onto a test-driven, behavior-driven development discussion there. But I think the importance of understanding what the thing's meant to do, and checking that wherever it came from, that bit of software component, does the thing you want it to do is going to become much more important. Now the trouble is, where you'll ever get senior developers if we've got AIs being junior developers, I'm not sure. I think the industry, it'd be interesting to see what the career profile would be, because as you said, if they're not employing junior developers, then how will the new crop of games programmers cut their teeth and get that experience? But maybe there's going to be a new job of I don't know, games developer, a coach or something online, and that would be, people might have to pay an expert for the experience. I think we're going to see changes in careers and roles and job titles when things that used to be difficult to do are going to be done to some extent by AI. Something that's I would like to have gotten to this book, or I might go into the next one, would be getting Unity to communicate with data sources, with using APIs to talk to other online systems. There's a tiny bit there for the PHP high score thing, but I think we'll be using online sources of data or 3D models or whatever. If we wanted a model of a pixie in a green hat with a cutlass, animated with a rig, maybe we'll be asking an AI to do that and send us the FBX. I think it's a very exciting time to be in software development.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I think that would be an interesting book too, if you just had one on like integrating Unity or game engines with different APIs. You could do, some of the ones that you'd mentioned. You could also go out to things like ChatGPT, add things like PlayFab, Unity services. If it covered like how to do a bunch of different services, it'd be like more like a cookbook too, where like each chapter is like this kind of thing. It could be a very interesting one. And then you show obviously how to do custom services as well. But I think if you hit a lot of the common ones like Steam, probably the most important one that people care about, and then maybe Epic Store and all the different store platforms, the things that people actually are going to primarily use. PlayFab's a big one. I'm not sure. You probably know better than me the full list, but yeah.
That'd
be cool.
And I think maybe that's something we need to think about. I can talk to Pact about is maybe we need to look at the follow-on books. They couldn't fit them into this one, but there's definitely some directions where the industry is going, and people will want to learn about those sorts of things from good sources. So that would be a great book, actually. Again, it's one I wish was there and I could just use, but what generally happens is that it's not there, so I write it. So I've in the past already. So yeah.
That's what got me started doing tutorials. I was looking for info and I couldn't find it, and I was like, well, maybe this will be useful for somebody else. So I put it up there, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of fun. I'm gonna keep doing that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When people start using your stuff, it's fun and interesting.
And I don't know about maybe like yourself, but I feel I've forgotten more about programming than I can remember. But doing it as a book makes me write things in a much more careful way and so on, and it's there as an external memory, especially if we're jumping between technologies and different tasks in the day and all sorts. So as well as, so as a reference for myself, I would look things up on this as sometimes if I haven't done like the audio, as you say, audio. Maybe again these Bachelor of Arts students of mine would be very big into audio and all sorts, but I think if you come from a more technical background, then it's just something that you add a bit of extra ambience to the thing that you've written afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it comes from working in the editors too much and having the music on so much that it drives you insane. You just can't stand to hear it after. It's like after the first week of working on games and hearing the same music play over and over and over, hearing it restart 100 times a day, it'll drive you nuts. So you start muting it, and then you just forget about it. At least I do.
Yeah.
So I had two more quick questions for you. First off, if people want to grab the book and get it for themselves, or maybe give it to some new developers that are starting out that they know that they want to help level up, where should they go grab it? What's the best place to do that?
Okay, well, I'm guessing you're going to have a link on your page there. But there's two main places. They can go to the Pact website, pact.com, or you can get it from Amazon, the UK Amazon, the US Amazon, or whatever. They're the two key sources to get it from. And then again,
okay, I'll make sure we link both of those. And there's a digital and physical version, right?
There is, yeah. So you can buy just the digital copy for a reduced price. But if you buy the physical copy, then you'll get the digital copy for free. And regardless of whether you buy the book or not, if you go to GitHub, now I'll send you the link there. There's a cover page which is the Pact GitHub main repository there, and then just because it's there so big, I've created an individual repository for each individual project on my own GitHub there. So even if you don't buy the book, you can download the projects and look inside them and run them and look at the code and learn that way. And then hopefully you'll say, well, let's buy a copy to say thanks or to learn a bit more. But the code's all out there for free anyway.
Nice, yeah. You should grab the book if you go check out the code and you like it. And if you do, make sure that you go leave it a good 5-star review. Tell everybody what you thought of it. I think it's super important to get this stuff out there in front of people. And again, if it's too beginner for you, maybe you know somebody else who it's good to give it to. I always like having a couple different books. Like I have a kind of a stack of them around, and when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, oh wait, this is the perfect book for you. I just give them like, here you go, here's the one, and I just like keep them, and I've got like a couple copies of different books. Like, yeah, here's the one for you. It's that and random electronics too.
I tried to have all the books here from the original one, but I couldn't find the 2018 edition because I'd given them all away to people just like this. Now I signed them, but yeah, it's there was it was who was it last? I think it was the son of someone at volleyball or something. To someone anyway. Someone through one of the kids there. Someone wanted to learn programming. So, but yeah, I got an email from a student in Spain. I used to teach in London in the 90s in Middlesex University in North London, and I had a student there. It was a book on object-oriented analysis and design, and this is like about 3 weeks ago. He said, "Oh, I just found this book you lent me in 1997 or something. Do you want it back?" And I said, "No." I said, the postage is probably more than the book is worth. But yeah, I said hi to him anyway. But yeah.
It's not one of those rare books that skyrocketed in value.
Actually, I did actually have the original Oculus. Was it the SDK, the first Oculus Rift development thing, because I was part of the Kickstarter thing. Now I lent that to students about 5 years ago for a fourth year project, and I forgot to make a note and that wasn't returned to me. So actually, so if you're my student team, you're a third year student team, and you borrowed my Oculus Rift, if you could hand it back, that would be nice. But there you go. I bought myself a Quest 2 last year, so with the royalties from this book actually. So yeah, there we go.
Nice, nice. Cool. Well, I guess last, I just was curious if you have any final thoughts or words for developers out there wanting to build their own games or learn just general software stuff. Anything that you would recommend that they go do? Anything they should check out, or just general advice? Maybe general life advice. I don't know.
Right. I suppose. Yeah, I suppose I would think big. I mean, I've got an idea for a sort of a new game mechanic, and I'm working on that at the moment. The trouble is, it's one of the sort of side projects. But I suppose, so to have ambitions to do interesting, challenging things. If you don't know how to do them, then to reach out in the community. So I mean, Stack Overflow is great. My details. I mean, I'm accessible through GitHub and email and all sorts. Not that I would consider, I'm not a professional games programmer, but I suppose I know a lot about Unity. But I think whenever I've gone out and asked questions through the community that I know, most especially games developers, because they're generally quite fun. I think if you went to a financial services programmer, maybe they're fun people, I'm not sure. But I found whenever
the programmers might be, but the rest of the events probably not.
yeah. But I mean, most experienced programmers, if you ask politely, if you know their time's valuable, so you ask a clear question and so on. I've never had someone say no. I've always come away learning more whether it's online or through meetups and things. So if you get stuck on something, then yeah, reach out to the community and ask for help. That's the way you learn, and you don't learn by just doing the things you're able to do now. You learn by challenging yourself, and then overcoming the obstacles to achieve the thing that you try to do. That's what I'd say.
Oh, I think that's great advice. Like just sitting there doing the same thing over and over, you don't grow, and it's like I always get reminded of Richard Campbell talking about people working the same job for 10 years. They got 10 years on the experience, but really they got 1 year of experience times 10 because they haven't done anything new for the last 10 years. They're just doing the same thing. And it can happen with programmers. I've seen it happen where, you're just stuck there working on maintenance on this thing and nothing really changes. You're just doing little stuff here and there, and you don't really get an opportunity to look into new stuff and grow and do those things. So it's very important to constantly be pushing. That's awesome advice. All right, thank you again, Matt. This was great. If everybody watching hasn't already grabbed the Unity Cookbook, make sure that you do. I'll link it down in the description so you can go grab it right now and let Matt know what you think. If you have any questions, I believe you've got contact info in the book, right?
That's right, yeah. And I'd say if you think we can improve the book for the next edition, let us know, and we happily take those ideas on board. That's how things get better.
Nice. Yeah, I always love getting recommendations and comments from the people who actually use the stuff. They'll tell you what stuff is missing, what didn't make sense, and what things they'd like to see next. It's always really good. So, all right, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Matt. We'll see you later.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right.